Have you ever fallen asleep to the chaotic sounds of Peter Griffin crashing through a wall or Stewie plotting world domination? Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, twisted, and surprisingly intricate world of Family Guy lore that's somehow become the perfect background noise for millions of viewers worldwide. From the hidden connections between episodes that span decades to the dark secrets lurking beneath Quahog's surface, this is your ultimate guide to the Family Guy universe that will either help you drift off to dreamland or keep you wide awake, questioning everything you thought you knew about America's most dysfunctional animated family. Family Guy has been on our screens for over 2 decades now, and what started as a simple animated sitcom has evolved into something far more complex and layered than most people realize. Tonight we're going to explore the deep lore, the recurring mysteries, the character backstories that only dedicated fans know about, and all the subtle details that make this show a fascinating rabbit hole to fall down as you're trying to fall asleep. Let's start with the Griffin family themselves, because there's so much more to these characters than meets the eye. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling father figure. His backstory reveals a man shaped by abandonment, neglect, and a desperate need for acceptance that manifests in increasingly destructive ways. We learn throughout the series that Peter was adopted, never knowing his real father until much later in the show's run. This abandonment issue explains so much about his behavior, his need to be the center of attention, and his often childlike approach to solving problems. But here's where it gets interesting for our sleepy exploration. Peter's job history reads like a fever dream. He's worked at a toy factory, been a fisherman, worked at a brewery, become a bodyguard, tried his hand at being a country music star, worked as a private investigator, and somehow ended up back at the brewery multiple times. Each job change represents a different phase of the show's evolution, and if you're watching chronologically as you fall asleep, you can actually track the show's tonal shifts through Peter's career moves. Lois Griffin presents an even more fascinating character study for our nighttime viewing. She comes from the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, which immediately sets up this class conflict that runs throughout the entire series. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, represents old money, conservative values, and everything that Peter both despises and desperately wants to be accepted by. Lois chose Peter over her privileged background, but this choice haunts their relationship in subtle ways that become more apparent when you're watching with sleepy, unfocused attention. The really interesting lore element here is how Lois's musical background keeps surfacing throughout the series. She's classically trained, she's performed professionally, and there are hints that she gave up a potentially successful career to become a housewife and mother. These musical moments in the show often serve as brief respites from the chaos, making them perfect for viewers who are using the show to wind down. Now let's talk about Meg, because her character arc is actually one of the most complex and disturbing elements of the Family Guy universe. What starts as typical teenage awkwardness evolves into something much darker. The family's treatment of Meg goes beyond normal sibling rivalry or parental frustration. It becomes a systematic emotional abuse that the show initially played for laughs, but gradually reveals as genuinely harmful. The lore around Meg includes several episodes that suggest she's actually the most mentally stable and capable member of the family, which makes her treatment even more tragic. She's shown to be intelligent, talented, and capable of genuine empathy, qualities that the rest of the family either ignores or actively punishes. For viewers drifting off to sleep, Meg's storylines often provide a strange sort of comfort because they're usually quieter and more introspective than the main family chaos. Chris Griffin's character development follows a different trajectory entirely. While he's often dismissed as the dumb kid, the show's lore reveals that Chris has artistic talent, musical ability, and emotional intelligence that surpasses most of his family members. His relationship with his father is complicated by Peter's own insecurities about masculinity and success. Chris represents the possibility of breaking the cycle of dysfunction, which gives his character an underlying hopefulness that works well for bedtime viewing. But let's dive into the real star of Family Guy's complex lore, Stewie Griffin. This character has undergone one of the most dramatic evolutionary arcs in television history. He started as a genuinely evil baby bent on world domination and matricide, but gradually transformed into a complex character dealing with identity, sexuality, and belonging. The show never explicitly addresses this transformation, which creates this fascinating ambiguity about whether Stewie actually changed or whether we're just seeing different aspects of his personality. The time travel episodes featuring Stewie create some of the most intricate lore in the entire series. His future selves, his various timelines, and his technological capabilities suggest a level of intelligence and capability that extends far beyond what we see in regular episodes. These time travel storylines often involve quieter, more contemplative moments that are perfect for viewers who are trying to relax. Stewie's relationship with Brian creates another layer of lore that's perfect for our sleepy exploration. Their friendship transcends the typical pet-owner relationship and becomes something closer to intellectual partnership. They travel together, solve problems together, and engage in philosophical discussions that often serve as the show's more thoughtful moments. Their dynamic provides a consistent emotional anchor throughout the series' more chaotic elements. Speaking of Brian, his character lore is incredibly rich and often overlooked. He's not just a talking dog. He's a failed writer, a recovering alcoholic, a liberal intellectual, and someone struggling with depression and self-worth issues. His various romantic relationships throughout the series reveal someone desperately seeking validation and connection. His death and resurrection in later seasons created one of the most emotionally impactful storylines in the show's history, demonstrating how attached viewers had become to his character. The setting of Quahog itself deserves exploration in our lore deep dive. This fictional Rhode Island town has its own mythology, complete with local celebrities, recurring businesses, and a distinct culture. The Drunken Clam serves as a central gathering place where much of the show's male bonding and philosophical discussions occur. Mort Goldman's pharmacy, the local news station, and various other businesses create a sense of continuity and community that grounds the more absurd elements of the show. Cleveland's departure and return to the series creates interesting lore implications. His time in Virginia with his own spin-off show exists in the same universe, and references to his experiences there occasionally surface in Family Guy episodes. This interconnected universe concept adds depth for viewers who are familiar with both shows. Quagmire's character provides some of the darkest lore in the entire series. While often played for laughs, his behavior patterns suggest serious psychological issues and criminal tendencies. The show occasionally hints at a more complex backstory involving his father's gender transition, his military service, and his dysfunctional relationship patterns. These darker elements create an interesting contrast with his seemingly cheerful demeanor. Joe Swanson's backstory as a disabled police officer adds another layer of complexity to the Quahog community. His accident, his marriage to Bonnie, and his struggle to maintain his sense of purpose and masculinity after becoming paralyzed provide some of the show's more serious emotional content. His friendship with Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire often explores themes of loyalty, acceptance, and adaptation that work well for contemplative viewing. The show's cutaway gags, while seemingly random, actually create their own form of lore through recurring characters and situations. Conway Twitty appearances, the various historical figures Peter claims to have interacted with, and the recurring joke characters all contribute to the show's internal mythology. These cutaways often provide brief mental breaks that can be soothing for viewers trying to wind down. Family Guy's approach to continuity is deliberately loose, which actually makes it perfect for casual viewing. Unlike serialized dramas that require intense attention to plot details, Family Guy episodes can be enjoyed independently while still rewarding longtime viewers with references and callbacks. This makes it ideal for background viewing or for times when you're not paying complete attention. The show's musical numbers deserve special mention in our lore exploration. From Conway Twitty performances to elaborate Broadway-style productions, these musical interludes often serve as the show's most memorable and emotionally resonant moments. They break up the rapid-fire joke delivery and provide opportunities for character development and emotional expression. The various holiday episodes throughout the series create their own seasonal lore. Christmas episodes often explore themes of family, tradition, and redemption. Halloween episodes venture into horror and supernatural territory. These special episodes often feature higher production values and more elaborate storytelling that reward dedicated viewing. The show's treatment of religion, politics, and social issues creates ongoing lore threads that reflect changing social attitudes over the show's long run. Early episodes approach these topics differently than later ones, creating an interesting timeline of cultural evolution that can be tracked through the series' progression. Guest appearances and celebrity encounters in Family Guy often become part of the show's lore through recurring references and callbacks. These celebrity interactions sometimes extend beyond single episodes, creating ongoing relationships and references that reward longtime viewers. The various alternate reality and parallel universe episodes explore different versions of the Griffin family and Quahog community. These episodes often reveal character depths and relationship dynamics that aren't apparent in regular episodes. They also provide opportunities to explore what-if scenarios that add complexity to our understanding of the main characters. Family Guy's animation style evolution tells its own story about the show's development and budget changes over time. Early episodes have a distinctly different look and feel compared to more recent ones. This visual evolution creates a subtle timeline that longtime viewers can use to place episodes chronologically, even without checking air dates. The show's relationship with Fox Network, including its cancellation and resurrection, becomes part of its own meta-lore. Episodes that reference these real-world events blur the line between fiction and reality in ways that add extra layers for dedicated fans to discover and contemplate. As we wind down our exploration of Family Guy's rich lore landscape, it's worth noting that this depth and complexity is part of what makes the show so suitable for repeated viewing and background watching. There's always another layer to discover, another connection to make, another character detail to notice. Whether you're actively watching or letting it play, while you drift off to sleep, Family Guy's universe provides a consistent, familiar, and surprisingly deep world to explore. The beauty of Family Guy lore for bedtime viewing lies in its perfect balance of familiarity and discovery. You can watch episodes you've seen dozens of times and still notice new details, catch references you missed before, or simply let the familiar voices and situations wash over you as you relax. The show's episodic nature means you won't lose important plot threads if you fall asleep mid-episode, but its rich lore rewards those moments when you find yourself unexpectedly engaged and alert. Sweet dreams, and remember that somewhere in Quahog, Peter Griffin is probably about to do something that will somehow make perfect sense within the wonderfully chaotic universe that has been entertaining us for over 2 decades. What if I told you that the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island, holds some of the most intricate storytelling mysteries hidden in plain sight? Tonight, we're diving deep into the sprawling universe of Family Guy, uncovering the hidden lore, forgotten storylines, and interconnected mysteries that make this animated sitcom far more complex than most people realize. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a gentle journey through the surprisingly rich mythology of the Griffin family and their bizarre little town. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Family Guy isn't just a collection of random cutaway gags and crude humor. Beneath all the chaos lies a carefully constructed universe with its own internal logic, recurring themes, and surprisingly deep character development that spans over 2 decades of storytelling. The show has created an entire ecosystem of characters, locations, and running narratives that interweave in ways that become apparent only when you step back and look at the bigger picture. Consider the Griffin family home itself. That modest 2-story house at 31 Spooner Street has witnessed countless adventures, but it's also a character in its own right. The house has its own history, its own secrets, and its own role in the family's story. We've seen glimpses of its past through various episodes, learning about previous owners and the strange events that have occurred within its walls. The basement has served as everything from a secret laboratory to a tornado shelter, while the attic holds forgotten memories and mysterious artifacts from the family's past. Peter Griffin, the family patriarch, represents something far more complex than the typical bumbling father figure. His character arc across hundreds of episodes reveals a man struggling with responsibility, identity, and his place in the world. His various jobs throughout the series aren't just random plot devices, they're explorations of the American, working-class experience. From his time at the toy factory to his stint as a fisherman, From his brief career as a bodyguard to his adventures in television production, Peter's employment history tells a story about economic uncertainty and the changing nature of work in modern America. The relationship between Peter and his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt, opens up entire storylines about class, wealth, and family dynamics. Carter represents old money, established power, and traditional values, while Peter embodies working-class sensibilities and anti-establishment attitudes. Their ongoing conflict reflects broader cultural tensions about privilege, success, and what it means to be a man in contemporary society. The episodes focusing on their relationship often reveal deeper truths about both characters, showing us sides of Peter we rarely see, and humanizing Carter beyond his role as the wealthy antagonist. Lois Griffin's character development represents one of the show's most subtle long-term storytelling achievements. Initially presented as the patient, long-suffering wife, Lois has evolved into a complex character with her own ambitions, frustrations, and moral complexities. Her musical background, her brief career as a model, her struggles with motherhood, and her occasional dark turns all contribute to a character portrait that's far richer than it appears on the surface. The episodes that focus on Lois often explore themes of unfulfilled potential, the sacrifices women make for family, and the tension between personal desires and social expectations. The children of the Griffin family each represent different aspects of growing up in modern America. Meg's role as the family scapegoat initially seems cruel, but viewed through a longer lens, her character arc becomes a meditation on adolescence, social acceptance, and finding one's place in the world. Her various attempts to fit in, her brief moments of triumph, and her resilience in the face of constant rejection tell a story about teenage life that's both exaggerated and surprisingly authentic. The episodes where Meg finally stands up for herself or finds temporary happiness hit differently when you understand the full context of her journey. Chris Griffin's character explores themes of masculinity, creativity, and coming of age. His artistic talents, his awkward social interactions, and his relationship with his father create a narrative about growing up different in a world that values conformity. The episodes that focus on Chris often deal with sensitive topics like bullying, self-expression, and the pressure to live up to expectations. His friendship with Herbert, the elderly neighbor, creates uncomfortable comedy, but also touches on themes of loneliness and the generation gap. Then there's Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the entire series. His evolution from would-be world conqueror to sophisticated intellectual represents one of the most significant character developments in animated television. Stewie's relationship with Brian, his adventures through time and space, and his gradual coming to terms with his own identity create storylines that are simultaneously hilarious and surprisingly moving. The episodes that focus on Stewie often push the boundaries of what's possible in the Family Guy universe, introducing science fiction elements, philosophical discussions, and emotional depth that contrasts sharply with the show's typical tone. Brian Griffin serves as the show's moral center and intellectual conscience, but he's also deeply flawed in ways that make him more human than many actual human characters. His struggles with alcoholism, his pretentious intellectual posturing, his complicated romantic relationships, and his role as the family's voice of reason create a character who's simultaneously admirable and infuriating. The episodes that explore Brian's background, his relationship with his own identity as a talking dog, and his place in human society often serve as vehicles for social commentary and philosophical exploration. The town of Quahog itself is a character worthy of deep exploration. This fictional Rhode Island community has its own ecosystem of recurring characters, local institutions, and cultural traditions. The Drunken Clam serves as more than just Peter's favorite bar. It's a gathering place where working-class philosophy gets hashed out over beer and conversation. Jerome, the bartender, represents stability and wisdom in a world of chaos. The regular patrons each have their own stories and perspectives that contribute to the show's exploration of community and belonging. Quahog's local government, represented by Mayor Adam West, creates storylines that satirize American politics while also celebrating the absurdity of civic life. Mayor West's bizarre policies, his strange obsessions, and his genuine care for his constituents create a character who's simultaneously incompetent and oddly effective. The episodes dealing with local politics often reveal truths about democracy, leadership, and the relationship between citizens and their government. The show's approach to religion and spirituality, primarily explored through the Griffin family's relationship with their local church and various religious figures, creates ongoing narratives about faith, morality, and community. These storylines often challenge both religious orthodoxy and secular assumptions, creating space for nuanced discussions about belief and practice in modern American life. Family Guy's use of cutaway gags isn't just random humor, it's a storytelling technique that allows the show to explore ideas and scenarios that wouldn't fit into the main narrative. These brief vignettes often comment on historical events, pop culture phenomena, and social issues in ways that are both entertaining and insightful. The cumulative effect of hundreds of these cutaways creates a comprehensive commentary on American culture and society. The show's relationship with popular culture goes beyond simple parody. The various celebrity appearances, pop culture references, and media satires create a running commentary on fame, entertainment, and the role of media in modern life. Episodes that focus on Peter's brief brush with celebrity or Brian's attempts at literary fame explore themes about success, authenticity, and the price of public recognition. The recurring characters in Family Guy's universe each contribute to the show's exploration of different aspects of American life. Glenn Quagmire represents unchecked masculinity and sexual liberation, but episodes that delve deeper into his character reveal a more complex individual struggling with his own demons and desires. Cleveland Brown's friendship with Peter and his eventual move to his own spin-off series created storylines about race, friendship, and community that the show handled with surprising sensitivity. The show's treatment of disability, primarily through the character of Joe Swanson, creates ongoing narratives about resilience, adaptation, and the challenges faced by people with disabilities in American society. Joe's character development over the series shows him as a fully realized individual whose disability is just one aspect of his identity, not its defining characteristic. Family Guy's exploration of family dynamics extends beyond the immediate Griffin household to include the extended family members who appear throughout the series. Peter's relationship with his father Mickey, Lois's complex feelings about her parents, and the various relatives who drift in and out of episodes create a broader picture of how families function, dysfunction, and evolve over time. The show's handling of death and mortality, from the controversial killing and resurrection of Brian to the various deaths of minor characters throughout the series, creates ongoing meditations on loss, grief, and the meaning of life. These episodes often reveal the deep emotional connections between characters that might not be apparent in more comedic episodes. The science fiction elements that creep into Family Guy through Stewie's inventions and time travel adventures create opportunities for the show to explore philosophical questions about destiny, free will, and the nature of reality. The episodes dealing with alternate timelines and parallel universes suggest that the Family Guy universe is far more complex and interconnected than it initially appears. The show's treatment of education, primarily through the various school episodes and Chris and Meg's academic experiences, creates commentary on the American educational system, social hierarchies among young people, and the challenges of growing up in contemporary society. These storylines often reveal the ways that institutional structures both support and fail young people. Family Guy's exploration of work and economic life through Peter's various jobs and the family's financial struggles creates ongoing commentary about class, opportunity, and the American dream. The episodes that focus on economic hardship often reveal the ways that financial stress affects family relationships and individual well-being. The show's approach to mental health, explored through various characters' psychological struggles and Brian's role as unofficial family therapist, creates space for discussions about depression, anxiety, and the importance of mental health care. These storylines often handle serious topics with both humor and genuine sensitivity. As we wrap up this journey through the hidden depths of Family Guy's universe, it's worth noting that this exploration only scratches the surface of the rich storytelling possibilities contained within this seemingly simple animated comedy. The show's ability to balance crude humor with genuine emotional depth, social commentary with pure entertainment, and chaos with carefully constructed narrative arcs makes it a unique achievement in television comedy. The next time you watch an episode of Family Guy, try looking beyond the surface humor to see the deeper stories being told. Notice how character relationships evolve over time, how running gags develop new meanings in different contexts, and how the show uses its absurdist elements to explore very real human experiences and social issues. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the most unexpected places, even in the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you realize you've been watching Family Guy clips for 3 hours straight? Tonight, we're diving deep into the twisted, hilarious, and surprisingly complex world of Family Griffin and his dysfunctional Rhode Island family. So grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through decades of animated chaos that somehow became one of television's most enduring franchises. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his apartment, probably eating cereal for dinner, when he creates what would become a cultural phenomenon. But here's the thing most people don't realize about Family Guy. Beneath all the cutaway gags, pop culture references, and Stewie's diabolical schemes lies a surprisingly intricate web of character development, running storylines, and hidden details that span over 2 decades. Let's start with the Griffin family themselves, because honestly, they're way more complex than people give them credit for. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling dad who works at a brewery. He's actually a fascinating study in arrested development. Throughout the series, we've learned that his childlike behavior stems from a complicated relationship with his father, Francis Griffin, a strict Irish Catholic who never showed Peter affection. This explains so much about why Peter desperately seeks approval, while simultaneously rebelling against authority figures. But here's where it gets interesting. Peter's job at the Pawtucket Brewery isn't just random. It's actually owned by Carter Pewterschmidt, his father-in-law, which creates this whole dynamic where Peter is constantly trying to prove himself to a man who sees him as completely inadequate. The brewery itself has become this recurring location where some of the show's most memorable moments happen, from Peter's various workplace shenanigans to the time he discovered the brewery was basically stealing Budweiser's recipe. Now let's talk about Lois, because she's probably the most underappreciated character in the entire series. On the surface, she's the long-suffering wife who puts up with Peter's antics. But dig deeper, and you'll find a former wild child from a wealthy family who gave up everything for love. Lois comes from money, serious money, and she chose to live in a modest house in Quahog with a man her parents despise. Her maiden name, Pewterschmidt, carries weight in their social circle, but she rejected that lifestyle. The fascinating thing about Lois is how the show gradually reveals her past. She was this rebellious rich girl who dated musicians, experimented with different lifestyles, and had a completely different personality before settling down. Sometimes that old Lois emerges, usually when she's pushed too far, and those episodes are absolutely brilliant because they show the complexity beneath her patient exterior. Chris Griffin represents something really interesting in the show's evolution. Initially, he was just the awkward teenage son, but over time, the writers developed him into this surprisingly deep character dealing with typical teenage issues, amplified by his family's dysfunction. His relationship with his father is particularly touching because Peter, despite his flaws, genuinely tries to connect with Chris, even though he has no idea how to be a proper role model. What makes Chris compelling is how he's actually the most emotionally intelligent member of the family. He sees through his parents' problems, understands his sister's struggles, and often serves as the voice of reason, even though he's still figuring out his own identity. His various crushes, friendships, and coming-of-age moments provide some of the show's most genuine emotional beats. Meg Griffin. Oh, poor Meg. She's become this cultural touchstone for teenage awkwardness. But there's something genuinely tragic about her character that goes beyond the surface-level jokes. The constant rejection and abuse she faces from her family would destroy most people, but Meg keeps trying. She keeps hoping for acceptance, keeps pursuing her dreams, keeps believing that maybe tomorrow will be different. The really dark aspect of Meg's story is how the family uses her as their collective punching bag to avoid dealing with their own problems. When Peter and Lois are having marriage troubles, they unite in mocking Meg. When Chris feels insecure, he puts down Meg. It's this twisted family dynamic where she serves as the lightning rod for everyone else's dysfunction. But here's what's brilliant about the show's treatment of Meg. Occasionally, they give her episodes where she fights back or finds genuine happiness, and those moments hit differently because we've watched her suffer for so long. When she stands up to her family or finds someone who appreciates her, it feels earned in a way that's surprisingly powerful for a comedy show. Then there's Stewie, the baby genius with unclear sexual orientation and a British accent that nobody questions. Stewie's character has gone through the most dramatic evolution of anyone in the show. He started as this one-note villain baby trying to kill his mother and take over the world, but gradually became this complex character dealing with identity issues, family dynamics, and his relationship with Brian. The Stewie-Brian friendship is honestly the heart of the entire series. These two characters, despite their obvious differences, have this incredible bond built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Their adventures together, from time travel to road trips, provide some of the show's best storytelling because the writers can explore deeper themes through their relationship. What's fascinating about Stewie is how his intelligence serves as both a blessing and a curse. He can build time machines and understand complex scientific concepts, but he's, quote, still emotionally a child dealing with typical childhood fears and insecurities. His relationship with his mother is particularly complex because while he originally wanted to kill her, he gradually develops this deep love for Lois that he struggles to express. Brian Griffin deserves his own deep dive because he's arguably the show's most controversial character. He's this liberal intellectual dog who writes novels nobody reads, drinks martinis, and constantly preaches about social issues while being fundamentally flawed himself. Brian represents this specific type of person we all know, the friend who talks a good game about being progressive and enlightened, but whose actions don't always match their rhetoric. The genius of Brian's character is how the show gradually reveals his hypocrisy without completely destroying his likability. He's pretentious, he's selfish, he's often wrong about things he claims to understand, but he's also capable of genuine growth and moments of real insight. His romantic relationships throughout the series serve as this ongoing commentary on his character flaws and his struggle to become a better person. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy lore is how the show handles continuity. On the surface, it seems like a show where anything can happen and nothing really matters. But if you pay attention, there's actually a surprising amount of consistency in character development and running storylines. The writers remember details from episodes that aired years ago and will call back to them in unexpected ways. Take the ongoing rivalry between Peter and the giant chicken, Ernie. What started as a throwaway gag about expired coupons evolved into this epic saga spanning multiple episodes and featuring increasingly elaborate fight sequences. These battles have become legendary among fans because they represent the show's commitment to taking absurd premises to their logical extreme. The show's relationship with death is particularly fascinating. Characters die and come back, timelines get altered, and reality bends in ways that should break the show's internal logic. But somehow, it all works because the emotional core remains consistent. When major characters like Brian temporarily died, the fan reaction was intense because despite all the show's surreal elements, viewers had formed genuine attachments to these characters. Let's talk about Quahog itself, because the town is almost a character in its own right. This fictional Rhode Island community is populated by an incredible cast of recurring characters who each bring their own flavor to the show's universe. There's Joe Swanson, the paralyzed police officer whose determination and positive attitude contrast sharply with his neighbor's various dysfunctions. Cleveland Brown, before he got his own spin-off, represented this calm, reasonable voice in the chaos of Quahog. His friendship with Peter, despite Peter's often thoughtless behavior, showed this theme that runs throughout the series about how genuine friendships can survive even the most ridiculous circumstances. Glenn Quagmire is probably the most controversial neighbor because he's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. His character serves as this extreme example of toxic masculinity taken to absurd lengths, but the show occasionally gives him moments of vulnerability that suggest there's more to him than just his predatory behavior. The local businesses in Quahog each have their own personalities too. The Drunken Clam isn't just a bar where the guys hang out. It's this working-class sanctuary where they can escape their domestic responsibilities and bond over beer and television. Jerome, the bartender, represents this stable, wise presence who's seen everything and judges nothing. One of the most underappreciated aspects of Family Guy lore is how it handles social commentary. Yes, the show is often criticized for pushing boundaries, but if you look closely, there's actually a consistent moral framework underlying most episodes. The show frequently punishes characters for their bad behavior, even if those consequences don't carry over to future episodes. Peter's schemes usually backfire spectacularly, teaching him lessons he immediately forgets. Stewie's attempts at manipulation often result in him learning something about empathy or human connection. Brian's pretensions are regularly deflated by reality. The show has this way of exploring serious topics through absurd scenarios that somehow makes the underlying messages more palatable. The cutaway gags, which are probably the show's most recognizable feature, serve a purpose beyond just getting laughs. They provide breathing room in episodes, allow for pop culture commentary, and give the writers freedom to explore ideas that wouldn't fit into the main storyline. Some of these gags have become so iconic that they've entered the broader cultural conversation. What's really impressive about Family Guy's longevity is how it's managed to stay relevant across multiple decades of changing cultural landscape. The show started in the late 90s, survived cancellation, came back stronger than ever, and continues to find new audiences while maintaining its core identity. That takes real skill from the writers, voice actors, and animators who bring this world to life. The voice acting, especially, deserves recognition because Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each one. Peter's Rhode Island accent, Stewie's British sophistication, Brian's intellectual pretensions, roulette. Each voice tells you everything you need to know about the character before they even start talking. As we've journeyed through this animated universe tonight, what emerges is a picture of a show that's far more thoughtful and complex than its reputation might suggest. Family Guy works because beneath all the chaos and controversy, it's fundamentally about family. Messy, complicated, dysfunctional family, but family nonetheless. The Griffins may be terrible to each other most of the time, but when it really matters, they come together. Peter and Lois may have a dysfunctional marriage, but there are moments of genuine love and connection. The kids may be weird and damaged, but they're finding their way through adolescence and childhood as best they can. Maybe that's why Family Guy has endured for so long, and why we keep coming back to Quahog night after night. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, there's something comforting about a fictional family that's even more messed up than we are, but somehow keeps going anyway. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in Rhode Island, Peter Griffin is probably doing something incredibly stupid, Lois is wondering how her life got to this point, and Stewie is plotting world domination while secretly just wanting someone to read him a bedtime story. Sweet dreams, and thanks for joining me in the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy. What if I told you that Family Guy was originally supposed to end after just 3 seasons, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11th, which completely changed the show's trajectory? The animated series that millions of people watch every day has some absolutely mind-blowing secrets hiding beneath its crude humor and cutaway gags that most fans have never heard about. I've spent countless hours diving deep into the production history, behind-the-scenes drama, and hidden connections that make Family Guy one of the most fascinating shows on television. From celebrity feuds that shaped entire storylines to animation techniques that revolutionized the industry, this show has more layers than you might imagine. Let me take you on a journey through the most incredible Family Guy secrets that will completely change how you watch the show. We're going to uncover everything from the real-life inspirations behind your favorite characters to the corporate battles that almost killed the series multiple times. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Stewie, Peter, or even Brian the same way again. First, let's talk about something that literally saved Seth MacFarlane's life and indirectly saved Family Guy from never existing. On September 11th, 2001, MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. He had a ticket and was scheduled to fly from Boston to Los Angeles that morning. The only reason he survived was because his travel agent gave him the wrong departure time, telling him the flight left at 8:15 when it actually left at 7:45. McFarlane overslept, arrived at the airport, and discovered he had missed his flight by just 10 minutes. He was initially frustrated about missing the flight and having to reschedule his meetings in Los Angeles. It wasn't until he was sitting in the airport waiting area that he saw the news reports and realized the plane he was supposed to be on had crashed into the North Tower. This near-death experience profoundly impacted McFarlane's approach to Family Guy. The show's later seasons began incorporating more political commentary and social satire, partly because McFarlane felt he had been given a second chance to use his platform meaningfully. The controversial episodes that tackle everything from religion to politics can be traced back to this life-changing moment when McFarlane realized how fragile life really is. But that's just the beginning of Family Guy's incredible origin story. The show itself was born from McFarlane's college thesis film at the Rhode Island School of Design. He created a 9-minute animated short called The Life of Larry, featuring a character named Larry Cummings, who was essentially a prototype for Peter Griffin. The animation was crude, the jokes were simpler, but the DNA of Family Guy was already there. What's absolutely fascinating is that McFarlane submitted this college project to the animation studio Hanna-Barbera, and they were so impressed they hired him immediately. He was just 22 years old and suddenly found himself working on shows like Johnny Bravo and Cow and Chicken. But McFarlane had bigger dreams for his Larry character. He spent 2 years developing and refining the concept, eventually creating another short film called Larry and Steve, which featured the first appearance of a Brian-like dog character. This short caught the attention of Fox executives who were desperately looking for animated content to compete with The Simpsons. The network gave McFarlane an unprecedented deal, making him the youngest executive producer in television history at age 24. The character inspirations go much deeper than most people realize. Peter Griffin wasn't just a random creation. He was actually based on a security guard that McFarlane knew during his time working at Hanna-Barbera. This security guard had the same loud, obnoxious personality and even shared some of Peter's physical characteristics. McFarlane has said in interviews that he would observe this guard's behavior and mannerisms, essentially using him as a real-life reference for what would become one of television's most iconic characters. Stewie Griffin's character has an even more complex origin story. Initially, McFarlane envisioned Stewie as a completely different type of character. In the original concept, Stewie was going to be much more obviously evil and would have actually succeeded in some of his schemes to kill Lois. The character was inspired by the child villain from a 1970 seconds British film, but McFarlane realized that having a baby actually commit murder would make the show too dark for network television. The decision to make Stewie more ambiguously evil and eventually more sympathetic was one of the best creative choices the show ever made. It allowed the character to evolve over multiple seasons, becoming less focused on matricide and more focused on time travel, world domination, and his complex relationship with Brian. This evolution wasn't planned from the beginning, but happened organically as the writers discovered what worked best for the character. Speaking of Brian, his character represents something unprecedented in animated television. While other shows had featured talking animals, Brian was the first cartoon dog to be treated as a complete intellectual equal to the human characters. McFarlane made a conscious decision to never explain how Brian learned to talk or why he's so intelligent compared to other dogs in the show's universe. This creative choice was actually controversial within the animation industry because it broke the traditional rules of cartoon logic. Most animated shows establish clear parameters for their fantastical elements, but Family Guy deliberately leaves Brian's abilities unexplained. This ambiguity allows the character to function as both comic relief and serious dramatic foil, depending on what the story requires. The show's distinctive cutaway gag structure wasn't part of the original concept either. In the early episodes, Family Guy followed a more traditional sitcom structure with linear storytelling. The famous random cutaways that interrupt the main plot were actually added later when McFarlane realized they could use these moments to explore more surreal and experimental types of humor. These cutaways became the show's signature element, but they also created massive production challenges. Each cutaway requires additional character designs, backgrounds, and sometimes entirely different animation styles. A single episode might feature dozens of different mini-scenes that have nothing to do with the main plot, essentially making every Family Guy episode like 3 or 4 different shows combined into one. The voice acting process reveals another fascinating layer of the show's complexity. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 of the main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. What most people don't realize is that he records all of these voices in different sessions to maintain consistency. He can't switch between the voices quickly enough during regular recording sessions, so each character's dialogue is recorded separately and then edited together. MacFarlane has mentioned that Peter Griffin's voice is the most physically demanding because it requires him to strain his vocal cords to achieve that distinctive gravelly tone. After long recording sessions, MacFarlane sometimes loses his natural speaking voice temporarily because of the physical stress of performing Peter's dialogue. The show's relationship with censorship has created some of the most interesting behind-the-scenes stories in television history. Family Guy pushes boundaries constantly, but there's actually a sophisticated system of negotiations between the writers and network censors. The writers deliberately include jokes that they know will be rejected, using them as bargaining chips to keep the jokes they really want. This strategy has allowed Family Guy to get away with content that would never make it onto other network shows. The censors focus their attention on the obviously problematic material, which gives the writers cover to include more subtle but equally controversial content. It's essentially a game of misdirection that happens during every episode's production process. One of the most significant moments in Family Guy history happened when the show was actually canceled by Fox in 2002 after just 3 seasons. The network executives felt the show was too expensive to produce and wasn't attracting enough viewers in key demographics. This cancellation seemed like the end of the story, but something unprecedented happened next. The show's reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block became incredibly popular, attracting larger audiences than the original Fox broadcasts had achieved. Simultaneously, the Family Guy DVD sales broke records for animated television releases. Fans were literally buying seasons of a canceled show faster than DVDs of shows that were still in production. This combination of strong cable ratings and exceptional DVD sales convinced Fox to bring Family Guy back from the dead, making it the first canceled series in television history to be revived based primarily on home video performance. The revival created a new business model that other networks began copying, proving that traditional ratings weren't the only way to measure a show's value. The resurrection of Family Guy also changed how the show approached storytelling. When MacFarlane returned to production, he knew the show had been given an unlikely second chance, and this awareness influenced the writing in subtle but important ways. The characters became more self-aware, the jokes became more metatextual, and the show began directly addressing its own cancellation and revival in various episodes. Behind the scenes, the animation process for Family Guy utilizes techniques that most viewers never notice, but which significantly impact the show's distinctive look. Unlike many other animated series that use traditional cell animation or simple digital techniques, Family Guy employs a hybrid approach that combines hand-drawn character animation with digitally created backgrounds and effects. This hybrid technique allows the animators to create more dynamic camera movements and complex visual gags than would be possible with purely traditional methods. The show's famous chicken fights, elaborate musical numbers, and surreal cutaway sequences all rely on this sophisticated blend of old and new animation technologies. The writing room for Family Guy operates differently from most television shows because of the unique challenges created by the cutaway structure. The writers have to create 2 different types of content for every episode: the main storyline that follows traditional narrative rules, and the cutaway material that can be completely disconnected from reality. This dual writing process means that Family Guy episodes are actually much more complex to construct than they appear on screen. The writers have to ensure that the cutaways don't disrupt the pacing of the main story, while also making sure that each mini-scene within the cutaways has its own complete comedic arc. It's like writing a regular television episode while simultaneously writing dozens of very short comedy sketches. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture more than almost any other television show, with countless jokes, phrases, and visual gags becoming viral content across social media platforms. The Surfin' Bird episode alone generated thousands of remixes, parodies, and tribute videos from fans around the world. This cultural influence wasn't accidental but resulted from McFarlane's deliberate decision to make the show's humor as quotable and shareable as possible. The cutaway structure naturally creates bite-sized pieces of content that work perfectly for online sharing, essentially making every episode a collection of potential viral moments. The business side of Family Guy reveals how successful the show has become beyond just television ratings. The merchandise empire includes everything from action figures to video games, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue annually. The show's characters have appeared in commercials, theme park attractions, and even academic studies about animation and comedy. What makes this commercial success particularly interesting is that it happened despite the show being canceled once and facing constant criticism from various groups. Family Guy proved that controversial content could be incredibly profitable if it connected with audiences authentically, creating a template that many other shows have tried to follow. The voice cast beyond Seth MacFarlane includes some fascinating stories about how actors were recruited and how their characters evolved. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, was actually hired before the show was even greenlit by Fox. MacFarlane was so impressed by her audition that he wrote additional material specifically for her character, expanding Lois's role far beyond what was originally planned. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg Griffin, was just 14 years old when she started working on the show. Her voice literally changed during the early seasons as she went through adolescence while recording the character. The producers had to make subtle adjustments to accommodate her changing vocal range, creating a unique situation where a cartoon character's voice evolved naturally over time. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars differs significantly from other animated series. While The Simpsons typically has celebrities play versions of themselves, Family Guy often has famous actors voice completely original characters or play historical figures in cutaway gags. This approach allows the show to utilize celebrity talent in more creative and unexpected ways. Some of the most memorable Family Guy moments feature celebrities doing things they would never do on other shows. Precisely because the animated format and the show's irreverent tone give everyone involved permission to be more experimental. The result is guest performances that often become more famous than the celebrities' live-action work. The international versions of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures and languages. The cutaway gags often require complete restructuring for international audiences because the references are too specifically American to make sense in other countries. Foreign language versions sometimes feature entirely different jokes that serve the same comedic function but use locally relevant references. This localization process has created dozens of different versions of Family Guy that share the same characters and basic structure, but feature significantly different content. In some ways, these international versions are like alternate universe versions of the show, exploring how the same comedic sensibilities might express themselves in different cultural contexts. The technological evolution of Family Guy's production reflects broader changes in the animation industry. Early episodes were produced using techniques that were already becoming obsolete, while recent seasons utilize cutting-edge digital tools that would have been impossible when the show first aired. Despite these technical advances, the show has maintained its distinctive visual style by deliberately limiting how much the animation quality improves. This conscious decision to maintain visual consistency has allowed Family Guy to feel timeless in ways that many other long-running animated series don't achieve. Episodes from different decades can be watched together without jarring visual discontinuities, creating a cohesive viewing experience across more than 20 years of production. The legacy of Family Guy extends beyond entertainment into academic and cultural analysis. Universities offer courses that study the show as an example of postmodern comedy, examining how its cutaway structure reflects contemporary media consumption patterns and attention spans. The show has essentially become a case study in how traditional narrative techniques can be deconstructed while still maintaining audience engagement. As Family Guy continues into its third decade of production, its influence on comedy, animation, and popular culture remains undeniable. From Seth MacFarlane's near-death experience that changed everything, to the unprecedented cancellation and revival that rewrote television business models, the show represents one of the most fascinating success stories in entertainment history. The next time you watch Peter Griffin stumble through another ridiculous adventure or listen to Stewie's sophisticated observations, remember that you're experiencing the result of countless creative decisions, business battles, and pure accidents that somehow combine to create something truly unique in television history. Have you ever wondered about the fascinating dynamics that shape families throughout history? Tonight, as you settle into your bedtime routine, let me share some captivating insights about how family patterns repeat across generations, creating an intricate web of inherited traits, behaviors, and destinies that might just help you drift off into peaceful slumber. Family structures have always been complex tapestries, woven with threads of genetics, environment, and circumstance. Consider how certain characteristics seem to flow like rivers through family lines, creating patterns that emerge generation after generation. These inherited traits aren't just physical features, like eye color or height, but can include personality quirks, talents, and even behavioral tendencies that create a unique family signature. The concept of generational influence runs deeper than most people realize. When we examine family trees, we often discover that certain professions, interests, or life choices appear repeatedly across different generations. A family might produce multiple musicians, teachers, or entrepreneurs, not just through conscious choice, but through a combination of genetic predisposition, shared values, and environmental factors that create natural pathways for similar expressions of human potential. Birth order plays a fascinating role in shaping family dynamics. Firstborn children often develop leadership qualities and feel responsibility for their younger siblings, while middle children frequently become skilled negotiators and peacekeepers. The youngest children in families tend to be more creative and risk-taking, having learned to find unique ways to capture attention and carve out their own identity within the family structure. Family traditions serve as invisible threads that bind generations together across time. These rituals, whether simple bedtime stories, holiday celebrations, or annual camping trips, create shared memories that become part of the family's collective identity. Even seemingly minor traditions like Sunday morning pancakes or evening walks can have profound psychological impacts, providing stability and continuity that children carry forward into their own families. The role of family nicknames reveals interesting patterns about relationships and hierarchies within family units. Often, these pet names originate from childhood moments or personality traits, but they can persist for decades, sometimes becoming more commonly used than actual given names. These linguistic markers create intimate bonds, while also establishing informal family roles and expectations. Consider the phenomenon of family talents that seem to skip generations. A grandparent's artistic ability might lay dormant in their children, only to resurface dramatically in grandchildren who never received formal training but somehow possess intuitive skills. This genetic memory suggests that our family heritage carries forward capabilities that can emerge unexpectedly, creating surprising connections across time. Family communication patterns often mirror broader cultural values and historical contexts. Some families maintain formal, hierarchical communication styles passed down from previous generations, while others adopt more casual, egalitarian approaches. These patterns influence how family members express emotions, resolve conflicts, and show affection, creating distinct family cultures that can persist for generations. The geographic movements of families create interesting stories of adaptation and change. When families migrate, whether across countries or just to different neighborhoods, they face decisions about which traditions to maintain and which to modify. This process of cultural negotiation often reveals the most essential elements of family identity as members unconsciously choose which practices are too important to abandon. Family financial attitudes demonstrate remarkable consistency across generations. Families that experienced economic hardship often pass down frugal spending habits and strong work ethics, while families with consistent prosperity might emphasize different values around money and success. These economic philosophies become embedded in family culture, influencing career choices and life priorities for decades. The evolution of family roles over time reflects broader social changes while maintaining certain consistent patterns. Traditional gender roles within families have shifted significantly, yet many families still maintain informal divisions of labor and responsibility that echo historical patterns. Understanding these shifts helps us appreciate how families serve as bridges between past and present social norms. Family conflict resolution styles often become inherited patterns that influence how future generations handle disagreements. Some families emphasize direct confrontation and heated discussion, believing that airing grievances leads to stronger relationships. Others prioritize harmony and indirect communication, viewing conflict as something to be minimized rather than engaged. These approaches shape children's expectations about relationships throughout their lives. The role of family storytelling in preserving history cannot be overstated. Every family has its collection of stories about ancestors, significant events, and character-defining moments. These narratives serve multiple purposes. They preserve important information, reinforce family values, and create a sense of belonging to something larger than individual experience. The way these stories are told and retold shapes family identity. Family eating habits and food traditions reveal deep cultural connections and emotional bonds. Certain recipes become treasured family heirlooms, passed down with specific techniques and accompanying stories. The social dynamics around family meals, from formal dining protocols to casual kitchen conversations, establish patterns of gathering and sharing that influence social skills and relationship expectations. Educational values within families create powerful legacies that influence multiple generations. Some families prioritize formal academic achievement, creating environments where intellectual curiosity and scholarly success are highly valued. Others emphasize practical skills and hands-on learning, believing that real-world experience provides the best education. These educational philosophies shape career paths and life choices across generations. Family attitudes toward risk and adventure demonstrate interesting patterns of inheritance and rebellion. Conservative families might produce generations of careful planners and cautious decision-makers, while more adventurous families encourage risk-taking and exploration. Sometimes these patterns reverse, with risk-averse parents producing adventurous children as a form of generational rebellion or balance. The concept of family loyalty manifests in various ways across different family structures. Some families maintain strong expectations of mutual support and collective decision-making, while others prioritize individual autonomy and self-reliance. These loyalty patterns influence everything from career choices to marriage decisions, as family members navigate between personal desires and family expectations. Family creative expressions often create unexpected connections across generations. A love of music, visual arts, writing, or craftsmanship can emerge in various family members, sometimes connecting distant relatives who share artistic sensibilities. These creative threads create special bonds and often become sources of family pride and identity. The role of family pets in shaping household dynamics deserves special attention. Animals often become integral family members, teaching children about responsibility, empathy, and loss. The way families choose, care for, and remember their pets reveals important values about nurturing, commitment, and the circle of life. Family travel patterns and attitudes toward exploration influence worldview development across generations. Some families prioritize exposure to different cultures and experiences, believing that travel broadens perspective and builds character. Others focus on deep connections to local communities and familiar environments, emphasizing the importance of roots and stability. The management of family secrets and sensitive information creates complex dynamics that can influence relationships for generations. How families handle difficult topics like addiction, mental health issues, financial problems, or relationship conflicts establishes patterns of openness or secrecy that affect trust and communication across multiple generations. Family celebration styles reflect deeper values about community, tradition, and joy. Some families create elaborate celebrations for birthdays, holidays, and achievements, believing that marking special occasions strengthens bonds and creates positive memories. Others prefer quiet, intimate acknowledgments, focusing on personal meaning rather than external display. The role of extended family members like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in providing alternative perspectives and relationships cannot be overlooked. These connections often provide children with different models of adult behavior and alternative sources of support, enriching the family experience and providing backup systems during difficult times. Family decision-making processes reveal important patterns about authority, consensus building, and individual voice within family structures. Some families operate as democracies, where everyone's opinion carries weight, while others maintain hierarchical structures where certain members hold more influence. These patterns shape children's expectations about leadership and participation in other social contexts. The preservation and sharing of family photographs and mementos creates tangible connections to family history. The way families organize, display, and discuss these artifacts influences how younger generations understand their heritage and place within the family narrative. Digital technology has transformed these practices while maintaining their essential emotional functions. Family approaches to health and wellness often establish lifelong patterns that influence physical and mental well-being. Some families prioritize active lifestyles and preventive care, while others may have more reactive approaches to health issues. These attitudes toward physical maintenance and medical care create lasting influences on individual health choices. The way families handle transitions and major life changes reveals resilience patterns that can be passed down through generations. Some families thrive during periods of change, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth and adaptation. Others prefer stability and may struggle more with transitions, requiring additional support during periods of adjustment. Family gift-giving traditions and attitudes toward material possessions reflect deeper values about generosity, reciprocity, and the relationship between objects and emotions. Some families emphasize thoughtful, personalized gifts that demonstrate attention and care, while others focus on practical items or experiences rather than material objects. As we consider these intricate patterns that weave through family histories, we begin to understand that every family represents a unique experiment in human connection and development. The combinations of genetics, environment, choice, and circumstance create endless variations in how families function and evolve across time. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, perhaps reflect on the fascinating tapestry of your own family story. Consider the threads that connect you to previous generations and the new patterns you might be creating for future ones. Family dynamics continue to pattern strang up to one's own. Evolve, influenced by changing social norms, technological advances, and individual choices. Yet certain fundamental human needs for connection, belonging, and identity remain constant across all family structures. These complex family systems remind us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, connected to both past and future through invisible bonds of shared experience, inherited traits, and chosen relationships. Understanding these patterns can help us appreciate the remarkable diversity of human family experience, while recognizing the common threads that unite all families in their fundamental mission of nurturing, protecting, and preparing the next generation for their own journey through life. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with peaceful reflections on the beautiful complexity of family bonds that connect us all across time and space. Did you know that Family Guy has been running for so long that if you watched every episode back to back, you'd be sitting there for over 7 days straight without sleeping? And tonight, we're going to explore the deep, intricate lore of this animated universe in the most soothing way possible. So, grab your favorite blanket, get comfortable, and let me take you through the fascinating world of Quahog, Rhode Island, where nothing is quite what it seems on the surface. The Griffin family saga begins long before Peter Griffin ever graced our television screens. In the quiet suburban streets of Spooner Street, a complex web of relationships, histories, and mysteries has been weaving itself for decades. Tonight, we'll unravel these threads slowly and gently, allowing the rich tapestry of Family Guy's storytelling to wash over you like a warm, comfortable wave. Let's start our journey with the patriarch himself, Peter Griffin. Born in 1956, Peter's origin story is far more complex than his simple-minded exterior might suggest. His biological father, Mickey McFinnigan, was an Irish fighter pilot who had a brief romance with Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin, during World War II. This revelation, discovered much later in the series, adds layers to Peter's character that extend far beyond his love of beer and television. Growing up in Providence, Rhode Island, Peter's childhood was marked by the influence of his stepfather, Francis Griffin, a deeply religious man whose stern demeanor shaped much of Peter's rebellious adult personality. The tension between Peter's carefree nature and his stepfather's rigid expectations created psychological patterns that would follow him throughout his life, manifesting in his relationships with authority figures and his own parenting style. The Griffin family home at 31 Spooner Street holds secrets within its walls that span generations. Built in the 1940s, the house has witnessed decades of Quahog's evolution from a quiet fishing village to the bustling suburban community we know today. Each room tells a story, from the basement where Peter keeps his various collections and hiding spots, to the attic, where family memories gather dust alongside forgotten treasures. Lois Pewterschmidt Griffin brings her own rich family history to the Griffin legacy. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, her upbringing in Newport, Rhode Island, was marked by privilege and expectations that she would eventually rebel against by marrying Peter. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, represents old money aristocracy, while her mother, Barbara, embodies the socialite lifestyle that Lois chose to leave behind for suburban family life. The love story between Peter and Lois began in the most unlikely circumstances. Their first meeting at a college party seemed destined for disaster, with Peter's crude humor clashing against Lois's refined sensibilities. Yet beneath the surface differences, they found a connection that would withstand decades of marriage, countless adventures, and the chaos that seems to follow the Griffin family wherever they go. Their eldest child, Meg Griffin, carries the weight of being the family scapegoat, but her character development reveals depths that extend far beyond the surface-level jokes. Born Megatron Griffin, her name itself hints at the complex relationship she has with power and identity. Throughout the series, glimpses of Meg's inner strength emerge, suggesting that her current role in the family dynamic may be more temporary than it appears. Chris Griffin, the middle child, represents the gentle heart of the Griffin family. His artistic nature and kind spirit often serve as a counterbalance to the chaos surrounding him. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various creative pursuits reveal a sensitive soul navigating the complexities of adolescence while surrounded by the unconventional family dynamics that define the Griffin household. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most intriguing mystery in the entire series. His advanced intelligence, sophisticated vocabulary, and mysterious origins create questions that have puzzled fans for years. Some episodes suggest he's a genius infant, others hint at time travel capabilities, and still others present him as an ordinary baby whose adventures might exist primarily in his imagination. Brian Griffin, the family's talking dog, serves as both comic relief and philosophical anchor for the series. His role as the most rational member of the family often puts him in the position of voice of reason, though his own flaws and struggles with alcoholism and failed relationships make him a complex character rather than a simple moral compass. The extended Griffin family tree branches out in fascinating directions. Peter's sister, Karen, and his various relatives create a network of relationships that span different social classes and geographic regions. Each family gathering reveals new dynamics and old resentments that have been simmering beneath the surface for decades. Quahog itself functions almost as a character in the Family Guy universe. This fictional Rhode Island town has its own history, complete with founding families, local legends, and community traditions that date back centuries. The Drunken Clam, Peter's favorite bar, serves as more than just a drinking establishment. It's a social hub where local politics, gossip, and friendships are forged and tested. The town's various establishments each carry their own stories. The grocery store where Peter works has seen multiple ownership changes and corporate restructures, reflecting broader economic changes in small-town America. The local news station provides a window into Quahog's relationship with the outside world, while the various restaurants and shops create a sense of community continuity. Among Quahog's most colorful residents, we find characters whose backstories interweave with the Griffin family narrative in unexpected ways. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's neighbor, carries secrets from his past as a naval officer and pilot that occasionally surface to add depth to his character beyond his more obvious personality traits. His family history, including his relationship with his parents and his various romantic entanglements, creates ripple effects throughout the community. Cleveland Brown's departure and eventual return to Quahog represents one of the series' most significant character developments. His journey to Virginia and back again brought new perspectives to old friendships, while his marriage to Donna and the blending of their families created new dynamics in the established social order of Spooner Street. Joe Swanson's background as a police officer adds layers of law enforcement history to the neighborhood dynamic. His disability, acquired in the line of duty, represents both personal triumph and ongoing challenge, while his relationship with his wife Bonnie and their family creates another thread in the complex web of Spooner Street relationships. The recurring characters who populate Quahog each bring their own histories and motivations to the community. Mayor Adam West's eccentric leadership style masks a deeper commitment to his town, while his bizarre decisions often reveal unexpected wisdom. Dr. Hartman's medical practice serves the community despite his questionable competence, and his interactions with the Griffin family often provide insights into the town's healthcare system and social services. The series' approach to continuity creates interesting challenges for understanding Family Guy lore. Some episodes exist in their own bubble, while others build upon previous storylines or reference past events. This flexible approach to storytelling allows for both standalone adventures and deeper character development, creating a rich tapestry of experiences that can be appreciated on multiple levels. Religious and deeper, spiritual themes weave throughout Family Guy's narrative structure. Peter's complicated relationship with faith, influenced by his Catholic upbringing and his current skepticism, creates ongoing tension with his stepfather's devout beliefs. Lois's more moderate approach to spirituality provides balance, while the children navigate their own relationships with religious concepts and community expectations. The economic realities of the Griffin family life reflect broader American middle-class experiences. Peter's various jobs and career changes mirror the instability many families face in changing economic conditions, while Lois's occasional work outside the home represents the increasing necessity for dual-income households in suburban communities. Educational themes emerge through the children's school experiences at James Woods High School. The various teachers, administrators, and fellow students create a microcosm of American public education, complete with funding challenges, administrative politics, and the ongoing struggle to provide quality education in an underfunded system. Transportation plays a significant role in Family Guy lore, from Peter's various vehicles to the family's travel adventures. Each mode of transportation represents different aspects of American mobility culture, from the freedom of car ownership to the challenges of public transportation and the dreams of exotic travel destinations. The series' treatment of technology evolution provides a unique window into changing American society. Early episodes reflect the technology available at the time, while later episodes incorporate smartphones, social media, and digital culture into the storylines, creating interesting contrasts in how the characters adapt to technological change. Food culture permeates Family Guy storytelling, from Peter's love of unhealthy cuisine to the family's dining experiences at various restaurants. These food-related storylines often reflect broader American attitudes toward nutrition, dining culture, and the role of food in family bonding and social interaction. The changing seasons in Quahog provide natural rhythm to the series' storytelling. Holiday episodes create opportunities for family traditions, while seasonal activities reflect the natural cycle of New England life. These seasonal elements ground the fantastic elements of the show in recognizable patterns of American suburban life. As we reach the end of our gentle journey through Family Guy lore, it's worth noting that this animated universe continues to evolve and expand. New episodes add fresh layers to established characters, while introducing new elements to the community of Quahog. The ongoing nature of the series means that tonight's exploration represents just one moment in a continuously growing tapestry of storytelling. The Griffin family's adventures, both mundane and extraordinary, reflect universal themes of family, community, and personal growth, wrapped in the distinctive comedic style that has made Family Guy a cultural phenomenon. Whether dealing with everyday suburban challenges or embarking on impossible adventures, the characters of Quahog remind us that family bonds, friendship, and community connections provide the foundation for navigating life's complexities. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, let the gentle chaos of Spooner Street fade into peaceful dreams, knowing that tomorrow will bring new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities for the Griffin family and their neighbors to discover what it truly means to be part of something larger than themselves in the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy. Ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Quahog at 3 in the morning? Tonight we're exploring the most bizarre, hilarious, and downright weird facts about Family Guy that'll keep your mind occupied while you drift off to sleep. From hidden Easter eggs to behind-the-scenes secrets that even longtime fans don't know. This collection of random Family Guy trivia is perfect for those late-night moments when you need something entertaining but not too stimulating. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you're wondering about the strangest details from America's most controversial animated family. Well, you're in luck, because we've gathered dozens of fascinating tidbits that reveal just how deep the rabbit hole goes in Seth MacFarlane's animated universe. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's origins. Family Guy actually premiered in 1999, making it older than The Sopranos, Lost, and even The Office. But here's the kicker. The show was canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after 3 seasons, and then again in 2005 after being brought back for a 4th season. What saved it the second time? DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim were so successful that Fox had no choice but to bring it back permanently. Speaking of cancellations, did you know that the famous episode where Stewie and Brian get locked in a bank vault was actually written as a potential series finale? The writers thought the show might not get renewed, so they created this bottle episode as a way to give fans closure while keeping production costs low. It ended up becoming one of the most beloved episodes in the entire series. Here's something that'll make you appreciate the voice acting even more. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. But what's really impressive is that he can switch between all these voices seamlessly during recording sessions. The man is basically having conversations with himself for hours at a time. Imagine being in that recording booth and watching him argue with himself as Peter and Stewie. Now let's talk about some hidden details you've probably never noticed. In the opening credits, when the family is sitting on the couch, Stewie is always holding a different object. Sometimes it's a teddy bear, sometimes a ray gun, and occasionally it's something completely random, like a pineapple. The animators change this detail regularly, but it's so subtle that most viewers never pick up on it. The Griffin's address has actually been revealed multiple times throughout the series, but it keeps changing. Sometimes they live at 31 Spooner Street, other times it's 29 Spooner Street. This isn't continuity error, it's an intentional joke about how cartoon families can basically live anywhere the writers need them to live for the sake of a gag. Here's a weird one. Meg's full name is actually Megatron Griffin. This was revealed in one episode as a throwaway joke, but it's technically canon. Her parents named her after the Transformers villain, which honestly explains a lot about why she turned out the way she did. Imagine going through high school with that on your birth certificate. The chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken aren't just random acts of cartoon violence. They're actually parodies of classic action movie fight scenes. Each fight references different films, from They Live to The Matrix. The writers spend enormous amounts of time choreographing these sequences to match specific cinematic moments frame by frame. Speaking of references, Family Guy holds the unofficial record for most pop culture references in a single animated series. The writers keep a database of potential references organized by category, decade, and obscurity level. They literally have spreadsheets dedicated to tracking which celebrities they've already made fun of and which ones are still fair game. Here's something about Brian that might change how you see him. His character was originally supposed to be much more of a background character, like a regular family pet who occasionally made sarcastic comments. But Seth MacFarlane enjoyed voicing him so much that Brian evolved into basically being Seth's mouthpiece for political and social commentary. This is why Brian often sounds like he's giving a college lecture. He essentially is. The Conway Twitty cutaways aren't just random musical interludes. They serve a specific purpose in television production. When episodes run short, the writers can insert these musical segments to pad out the runtime without having to animate new scenes or write additional dialogue. Its brilliant efficiency disguised as absurdist humor. Cleveland's house has been destroyed and rebuilt more times than any other location in the series. The writers keep track of this, and it's actually become a running competition among the staff to see who can come up with the most creative ways to demolish Cleveland's property. His house is basically the Kenny McCormick of buildings. Here's a detail about Quagmire that most people miss. His house number is 29, Peter's is 31, and Cleveland's was 33 before he moved away. But Joe's house number has never been consistently established, which has led to fan theories that he doesn't actually own his house and is just perpetually house-sitting for someone else. The famous "whose line is it anyway" reference, where Peter lists random words, isn't actually random. Each word was carefully chosen to represent a different category of Family Guy humor. They're basically a roadmap of the show's comedic philosophy, hidden in plain sight. Stewie's accent has gradually changed over the years, from a thick British aristocrat voice to something more American. This wasn't accidental. Seth MacFarlane has said that maintaining the original accent was physically exhausting, so he's slowly been relaxing it as the series progressed. If you go back and watch early episodes, the difference is striking. The Pawtucket Brewery where Peter works is actually based on a real brewery in Rhode Island. The exterior shots are rotoscoped from actual footage of the Narragansett Brewery, though the interior is completely fictional. Local Rhode Islanders often spot familiar landmarks in the background of various episodes. Here's something about the show's animation. The characters' eyes are deliberately drawn to be slightly different sizes. Peter's left eye is always drawn slightly larger than his right, which gives him that perpetually confused expression. This asymmetry was added specifically to make him look more dopey and lovable. The reason death appears so frequently in early seasons is because the writers were originally planning to kill off a main character in every season finale, but Fox executives weren't comfortable with the concept. So death became a recurring character instead of a plot device, which is actually much funnier in hindsight. Lois's maiden name is Pewterschmidt, but her middle name has been given as both Marie and Nicole in different episodes. The writers claim this is intentional, suggesting that Lois has been lying about her middle name for years for reasons that will never be explained. The evil monkey in Chris's closet was originally supposed to be revealed as Chris's imaginary friend, but the writers decided it was funnier if he was completely real and just randomly living in their house. This decision led to one of the series' most beloved recurring characters. Here's something about the show's timeline. The Griffins have been celebrating the same holidays for over 20 years of real time, but they never age. However, the writers occasionally drop hints about the passage of time through background details like changing technology and evolving fashion trends in crowd scenes. The reason Peter's boss, Mr. Weed, died in such a bizarre way, choking on dinner rolls while watching Popeye, was because the writers wanted to establish that anyone could die at any time in the Family Guy universe for completely ridiculous reasons. It set the precedent for the show's approach to mortality as comedy. Tricia Takanawa's reporting segments are all written by the same staff writer who used to work in local television news. All of her ridiculous news stories are based on real absurd stories that the writer covered during his journalism career, just exaggerated for comedic effect. The Drunken Clam Bar where Peter and his friends hang out was modeled after Cheers, but the writers deliberately made it seedier and more depressing to contrast with that show's warm, welcoming atmosphere. It's meant to represent the difference between idealized television friendships and actual dysfunctional male bonding. Here's a weird production detail. The show's writers keep a cutaway database with hundreds of unused cutaway gags organized by setup line. If they need a quick cutaway for an episode that's running short, they can search the database by keyword and find something appropriate. Some of these unused cutaways eventually become the basis for entire episodes. The reason Herbert, the elderly neighbor, is so creepy isn't just for shock value, is inassigned. His character is actually a commentary on how society often ignores obvious warning signs about predatory behavior. The writers intentionally make him so obviously suspicious that it becomes absurd that no one in the show takes him seriously. Stewie's football-shaped head wasn't originally intentional. Seth MacFarlane was just a poor artist when he created the character, but the distinctive shape became so iconic that when the animation quality improved, they kept the weird proportions on purpose. The show's musical numbers aren't just random, They're specifically written to parody different Broadway and Hollywood musical styles. Each song is crafted to sound like it could come from a specific era of musical theater, from 1,930 seconds Hollywood musicals to modern Broadway productions. Here's something about the voice acting. When characters sing, their speaking voice actors don't always do the singing. Several characters have dedicated singing voices who are professional Broadway performers. This is why some characters sound noticeably different when they break into song. The chicken that fights Peter is named Ernie, and he has his own detailed backstory that's never fully explained in the show. According to the writers, Ernie has a family, a mortgage, and a completely normal life outside of his inexplicable rivalry with Peter. His motivations remain mysterious intentionally. Roadhouse is referenced more than any other single movie in Family Guy, appearing in over 30 different episodes in various forms. The writers have said this started as an inside joke because they couldn't believe how seriously the movie takes itself, but it evolved into genuine affection for the film's absurdity. The Conway Twitty segments were actually Seth MacFarlane's way of paying tribute to his grandfather, who was a huge country music fan. MacFarlane has said these moments are among his favorites in the entire series because they remind him of watching old variety shows with his grandfather. Meg's unpopularity isn't just a running gag. It's a deliberate commentary on how middle children often get overlooked in family dynamics. The writers have given her hidden depths that occasionally surface, suggesting she's actually the most emotionally intelligent member of the family despite being constantly ignored. The show's animation style deliberately mimics the look of 1,980 seconds Saturday morning cartoons, complete with slightly off-model character designs and limited animation techniques. This was intentional, as MacFarlane wanted the show to feel nostalgic and slightly cheap, like the cartoons he grew up watching. Here's a detail about the opening theme. The lyrics were written to sound like a generic sitcom theme song, but they're actually describing a completely dysfunctional family situation. The cheerful melody masks the fact that the words are talking about how nothing in this family works properly. The reason Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of unrelated sketches is because that's exactly what they are. The writers start with a basic premise and then build around it with whatever random ideas they've been wanting to explore. This approach gives the show its unique, chaotic energy. So there you have it. Dozens of random Family Guy facts to occupy your mind as you drift off to sleep. From production secrets to hidden meanings, the world of Family Guy is far more complex and deliberate than it might appear on the surface. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the show, these little details add extra layers to every rewatch. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere in Quahog, Peter Griffin is probably doing something spectacularly stupid, while Stewie plots world domination, and Brian writes terrible novels. The chaos never stops in the Griffin household, and honestly, we wouldn't want it any other way. Picture this. You're scrolling through endless YouTube videos at 2 a.m., your brain craving something familiar yet fascinating to drift off to. Well, buckle up because I've got a treasure trove of Family Guy secrets that'll either help you sleep peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this animated chaos machine actually works. From behind-the-scenes drama to mind-bending production facts, these random tidbits about the Griffin family will give your brain exactly what it needs for that perfect sleepy time content. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. The voice of Stewie Griffin, that diabolical baby genius we all know and love, is performed by the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane himself. But here's the kicker that most people don't realize. MacFarlane originally based Stewie's voice on the legendary actor Rex Harrison, who played Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. That posh, sophisticated British accent that makes Stewie sound like he stepped out of a Victorian manor? It's basically a baby doing an impression of a 1,960 seconds Broadway star. The irony is delicious when you think about it. This character who spends half his time plotting world domination is essentially channeling a musical theater legend. Now, if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the show's near-death experience that almost prevented it from becoming the cultural phenomenon we know today. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and for a hot minute there, it looked like the Griffin family was done for good. But then something magical happened that literally brought the show back from the dead. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created such a massive fan following that Fox had no choice but to resurrect it in 2005. It's like the show became a zombie that refused to stay buried, clawing its way back to life through sheer fan devotion. The creation story of Family Guy itself reads like something out of a fever dream. Seth MacFarlane was just 24 years old when he pitched the show to Fox, making him one of the youngest people ever to create and run their own animated series for a major network. He literally animated the entire pilot episode by himself, spending months hunched over a desk drawing frame after frame while surviving on probably nothing but coffee and determination. The original pitch was actually inspired by his college thesis film called The Life of Larry, which featured a middle-aged man with a talking dog. Sound familiar? That little student film eventually evolved into the multi-million-dollar empire we know today. Speaking of that talking dog, Brian Griffin holds a special place in animation history for reasons you probably never considered. Unlike most cartoon pets who remain perpetually animal-like, Brian is essentially a human character who just happens to be a dog. He drives cars, drinks martinis, writes novels, and engages in complex philosophical debates. MacFarlane has stated that Brian represents his own voice in the show more than any other character, which explains why the dog often serves as the moral compass of the family. It's basically MacFarlane having conversations with himself through a talking animal, which, when you think about it, is either brilliant or slightly concerning. The show's controversial humor didn't emerge by accident. It was a carefully calculated rebellion against traditional family sitcoms. MacFarlane deliberately set out to create the anti-Simpsons, something that would push every boundary The Simpsons wouldn't touch. Where The Simpsons used gentle satire and heartwarming family moments, Family Guy went nuclear with shock, humor, and deliberately offensive content. The cutaway gags, those random flashback sequences that became the show's signature, were originally MacFarlane's solution to a problem he had with traditional sitcom pacing. He wanted to break free from the constraints of linear storytelling and create something that felt more like channel surfing through a fever dream. Here's a production detail that'll make you appreciate the craft behind the chaos. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. That means the episodes you're watching right now were being worked on almost a year ago. The animation process alone involves hundreds of artists working across multiple studios, with the initial designs created in California before being sent overseas for full animation. It's like a massive international relay race, where each handoff has to be perfect or the whole episode falls apart. The voice acting sessions are apparently legendary affairs that sound more like comedy improv shows than traditional recording sessions. MacFarlane voices not just Stewie, but also Brian, Peter, and Glenn Quagmire, often having entire conversations with himself in the recording booth. The other voice actors have described watching him switch between characters mid-sentence as both impressive and slightly unsettling. Imagine seeing someone argue with themselves in 4 different voices while maintaining perfect character consistency. It's basically like watching a one-man theater performance in real time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writer's room operates. Unlike many animated shows that plan seasons far in advance, Family Guy's writing process is notoriously chaotic and last-minute. Writers have described sessions where entire episodes get scrapped days before animation begins, leading to frantic rewrites and sleepless nights. This seat-of-the-pants approach actually contributes to the show's unpredictable energy, but it also means that voice actors sometimes receive new scripts literally hours before recording sessions. The show's relationship with censorship has been a constant dance between pushing boundaries and avoiding network wrath. Family Guy has developed an almost scientific approach to testing limits, deliberately writing jokes that are slightly more offensive than what they actually want to air, knowing that network censors will demand cuts. The final version that reaches viewers is often the writer's actual intended content, achieved through strategic overwriting and negotiation. It's psychological warfare, disguised as comedy writing. MacFarlane's musical background plays a much larger role in the show than most people realize. Before creating Family Guy, he was actually a jazz vocalist and pianist, which explains the numerous musical numbers scattered throughout episodes. Those elaborate song and dance sequences aren't just random comedy bits. They're genuine musical theater productions compressed into cartoon format. MacFarlane has stated that he views Family Guy as partly a variety show. using the Griffin family as a framework to showcase different types of entertainment within each episode. The character designs themselves tell an interesting story about animation philosophy. Notice how the Griffin family members all have distinctly different body shapes and facial structures, unlike many cartoon families where everyone looks like variations of the same template. Peter's round, doughy appearance was specifically designed to contrast with Lois's sharp, angular features, while Stewie's football-shaped head was meant to make him instantly recognizable even in silhouette. These design choices weren't arbitrary. They were carefully calculated to ensure each character would be visually distinct even in crowded scenes or quick cuts. Here's something that'll change how you watch the show forever. The infamous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned as recurring segments. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but the animation team had so much fun creating the over-the-top action sequence that it became a running theme. Those elaborate, destruction-filled battles that seem to last forever? They're essentially the animation team showing off their action sequence skills in a comedy show, like flexing creative muscles that don't usually get exercised in traditional sitcom animation. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely twisted compared to other animated series. While most cartoons treat celebrity appearances as special events, with the famous person playing themselves or a character clearly meant to be them, Family Guy often buries celebrity voices in minor roles without any fanfare. A-list actors will voice background characters for single lines, and viewers might never realize they just heard a famous person deliver a throwaway joke. It's the entertainment industry equivalent of hiding expensive ingredients in cheap fast food. Family Guy's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences in humor. In some countries, entire episodes have been rewritten because the original jokes simply don't translate, not just linguistically, but culturally. What Americans find hilarious might be completely incomprehensible to audiences in other parts of the world, leading to localized versions that are essentially different shows with the same characters. It's like each country gets its own flavor of the Griffin family chaos, tailored to local sensibilities. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy extends into some surprisingly niche markets. Beyond the obvious t-shirts and DVDs, there are Family Guy-themed wine collections, luxury watches, and even high-end collectible sculptures that cost thousands of dollars. The show that built its reputation on lowbrow humor has somehow spawned upscale merchandise that wouldn't look out of place in expensive boutiques. It's cultural cognitive dissonance at its finest. The writing staff includes people from incredibly diverse backgrounds: former stand-up comedians, Harvard graduates, television veterans, and complete newcomers to the industry. This mix creates a unique creative environment where highbrow intellectual humor crashes into street-level comedy instincts. The result is a show that can reference obscure philosophical concepts in one scene and make fart jokes in the next, often within the same episode. Animation errors in Family Guy have become something of a cult fascination among fans. Unlike other shows that try to hide mistakes, Family Guy occasionally leaves obvious animation goofs in the final product, either intentionally, as Easter eggs, or because the production schedule doesn't allow for fixes. These errors have spawned online communities dedicated to spotting and cataloging every miscolored character, floating object, or impossible perspective. It's accidental, interactive entertainment, where viewers become detectives hunting for visual inconsistencies. The show's theme song, that bouncy piano melody everyone knows by heart, was originally much longer and included additional verses that were cut for time. The full version tells a more complete story about the Griffin family's dynamics, but network television's rigid timing requirements forced it down to the bare essentials. MacFarlane has occasionally performed the complete version at live concerts, giving fans a glimpse of what could have been the opening sequence if television had more flexible formatting. Voice acting for animated shows requires a completely different skill set than live-action performance, and Family Guy pushes these demands to extremes. The actors often need to deliver lines while laughing, crying, or even while their characters are supposed to be eating, fighting, or running. This means recording sessions frequently involve voice actors doing physical comedy performances in sound booths, acting out entire scenes with just their voices, while making exaggerated facial expressions that no one will ever see, but that somehow make the vocal performance more authentic. The show's relationship with current events creates unique production challenges. Because episodes take months to complete, jokes about contemporary issues often feel dated by the time they air, leading to a complex balancing act between topical relevance and timeless humor. Writers have developed strategies for creating content that feels current without being tied to specific news cycles, though sometimes they get caught off guard when major events happen during production and their carefully planned episodes suddenly seem tone-deaf or prescient in ways they never intended. Family Guy's influence on internet culture extends far beyond just memes and viral videos. The show's cutaway gag structure essentially predicted how people would consume media in the social media age. Short, disconnected bursts of content that don't require following a linear narrative. Those seemingly random flashbacks that interrupt the main story? They're basically the television equivalent of scrolling through TikTok or Twitter, jumping from one unrelated thought to another without warning. The economics behind Family Guy reveal interesting insights into how modern television actually works. Despite being an animated show with relatively high production costs, it's incredibly profitable because animated content doesn't age the same way live-action shows do. There are no aging actors demanding higher salaries, no physical sets that deteriorate, and no location shoots that become impossible due to changing landscapes. The Griffin family can theoretically exist forever without any of the logistical problems that eventually kill most television series. Behind all the controversy and chaos, Family Guy operates like a massive creative experiment in pushing the boundaries of what television can be. Every episode is essentially asking the question, what if we tried this completely ridiculous thing and somehow made it work within the framework of a family sitcom? Sometimes the experiments fail spectacularly, but when they succeed, they create moments of television that are genuinely unlike anything else on the air. The show has created its own internal mythology that's become increasingly complex over the years. Character relationships, running gags, and callback references have built up layers of continuity that reward longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. It's like a secret club where the membership requirement is having watched hundreds of hours of animated chaos, and the reward is understanding jokes that are incomprehensible to everyone else. And here's perhaps the most interesting fact about Family Guy. Despite all its success and cultural impact, the show remains fundamentally unpredictable. After more than 2 decades on the air, it can still surprise viewers with completely unexpected creative choices, bizarre guest appearances, or experimental episodes that break its own established rules. In a television landscape increasingly dominated by formulaic content, Family Guy maintains a chaotic creativity that keeps audiences guessing what might happen next. So there you have it, a deep dive into the wonderfully weird world behind one of television's most controversial animated families. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying wide awake in fascination, these facts reveal just how much complexity hides behind what appears to be simple cartoon chaos. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the Griffin household, normal is just another word for boring. Did you know that Peter Griffin once spent over 20 minutes trying to remember if he locked his car, only to realize he doesn't actually own a car? Or that there's an episode where he becomes convinced his shadow is following him around? Welcome to the world of Family Guy, where the most bizarre situations somehow become comedy gold. I'm about to share some of the most mind-bending, sleep-inducing facts about this animated chaos that might just surprise you. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind. Did you know that Peter Griffin has died more times than any other main character on Family Guy? We're talking about legitimate deaths here, not just close calls or fake-outs. Throughout the series, Peter's been killed by everything from falling pianos to alien invasions. Yet somehow, he always manages to come back in the next scene, like nothing happened. The writers have never officially explained this phenomenon, leading to fan theories that range from Peter being immortal to the entire show taking place in some sort of cartoon purgatory. Here's another weird one that might help you drift off to sleep. Peter's weight has been officially listed as anywhere between 270 pounds to over 400 pounds, depending on which episode guide you're reading. But here's the kicker. In one episode, they actually show Peter stepping on a scale that reads -5 pounds. The joke was that he was so full of hot air that he defied the laws of physics. This kind of absurd humor is exactly what makes Family Guy so uniquely ridiculous. Speaking of Peter's physical characteristics, his age is another mystery that changes depending on who's writing the episode. He's been anywhere from 39 to 45 years old throughout the series, but in one memorable episode, they reveal that Peter doesn't actually know his own birthday. He's been celebrating it on the wrong day for years because he misread his birth certificate, when Lois finally corrects him. Peter insists on having a do-over birthday party, complete with all the presents he should have received on his actual birthday for the past decade. Now here's something that might surprise you about the show's production. The famous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the giant chicken weren't originally supposed to be recurring segments. The first fight scene was meant to be a one-off joke, but it tested so well with audiences that the writers decided to bring it back. These elaborate fight sequences, which can last several minutes and involve massive property damage across multiple city blocks, have become some of the most expensive animated sequences to produce on television. Each chicken fight costs more to animate than entire episodes of some other shows. Let me tell you about Peter's job situation, which is honestly more confusing than quantum physics. Throughout the series, he's worked at a toy factory, a brewery, his own fishing boat business, and even briefly as a bodyguard for a pop star. But here's the thing that'll keep you puzzling as you fall asleep. Sometimes within the same season, the show will contradict itself about where Peter works. In one episode, he'll be complaining about his boss at the brewery, and in the very next episode, he's somehow back at the toy factory with no explanation whatsoever. The Griffin family house itself is another source of endless continuity errors that hardcore fans love to debate. The layout of the house changes constantly throughout the series. Sometimes there are 4 bedrooms upstairs, sometimes 3. The basement has appeared on both the left and right sides of the house in different episodes. Most bizarrely, there was one episode where they showed a second staircase that had never existed before and has never been seen since. It's like the house exists in its own dimension, where architecture is more of a suggestion than a rule. Here's a fact that might make you chuckle as you're trying to fall asleep. Peter Griffin holds the record for the most words spoken per minute in any animated television series. During his fastest rapid-fire dialogue sequence, he spoke over 400 words in 60 seconds. The voice actor, Seth MacFarlane, had to practice that particular monologue for weeks to get it right. And even then, they had to record it in multiple takes and edit them together digitally. The show's relationship with censorship has always been interesting. But did you know that there are entire episodes that have been completely banned from certain countries? Not just edited or censored, but completely prohibited from airing. These episodes aren't necessarily the ones you'd expect either. Sometimes it's because of obscure cultural references that were considered offensive, or because of background details that viewers in certain regions found problematic. There's apparently a whole vault of Family Guy content that most of the world will never see. Peter's relationship with food deserves its own documentary series. Throughout the show, he's eaten everything from expired milk that was older than Meg to a sandwich so large it required a forklift to deliver. But the most impressive feat was when he ate an entire Thanksgiving dinner, including the table it was served on, in under 3 minutes. This wasn't even treated as particularly unusual by his family, who just went ahead and ordered pizza instead. The voice acting for Peter involves more physical comedy than you might expect. Seth MacFarlane actually acts out many of Peter's movements while recording his lines, which is why the character's gestures often seem so natural and expressive. During particularly energetic scenes, MacFarlane has been known to sweat through multiple shirts in a single recording session. He's also injured himself several times while getting too into character, including once throwing out his back during a particularly enthusiastic laugh sequence. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's writing process. Many of Peter's most memorable one-liners were actually improvised during recording sessions. The writers would provide the basic structure of a scene, but they'd leave room for MacFarlane to add his own comedic touches. Some of these improvised moments became so popular with fans that they were later incorporated into the show's official mythology. The Griffin family car has been destroyed and mysteriously repaired more times than any other vehicle in television history. We're talking about complete destruction here. Blown up, crushed by giant robots, eaten by sea monsters, you name it. Yet somehow, it always appears good as new in the next scene. The car itself is supposed to be a mid-'80s sedan, but its exact make and model changes from episode to episode. Sometimes it's a Honda, sometimes it's a Ford, and occasionally it's a completely fictional brand that doesn't exist in real life. Peter's medical history reads like something out of a medical textbook written by someone who's never been to medical school. He's survived diseases that don't exist, undergone surgeries that are physically impossible, and been treated by doctors who clearly got their degrees from the back of a cereal box. In one episode, he's diagnosed with a condition where his bones are apparently made of rubber, which somehow makes him both incredibly flexible and completely indestructible. The show's approach to time and aging is fascinatingly inconsistent. While the Simpson family has remained the same age for decades, the Griffins seem to exist in a temporal bubble where sometimes years pass and sometimes they don't. Stewie has been a baby for over 20 years of real time. But there have been episodes where characters reference events from their past that would require them to have aged significantly. Here's a production detail that might interest you as you're winding down for the night. The animators have developed an entire catalog of Peter's facial expressions that numbers in the thousands. Each expression is carefully categorized by emotion, intensity, and context. There's apparently an expression called Peter confused by technology that gets used at least once per episode, and another one called Peter realizing he's made a terrible mistake. That's practically the show's trademark look. The Griffin family's financial situation is another source of endless mystery. Despite Peter's various job situations and questionable work ethic, the family somehow maintains a middle-class lifestyle in a decent neighborhood. They've been shown to be both desperately broke and surprisingly wealthy, sometimes within the same episode. Peter once claimed to have no money for groceries while simultaneously planning an expensive vacation to Europe. Peter's relationship with technology provides some of the show's most relatable comedy, especially for anyone who's ever struggled with modern gadgets. He's been defeated by everything from automatic doors to digital clocks. There was one memorable episode where he spent the entire runtime trying to figure out how to change the channel on a television remote, only to discover at the end that the TV wasn't even plugged in. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over the years, but Peter's character design has remained remarkably consistent. The animators have stated that his round shape and simple features make him one of the easier characters to draw, which is ironic considering how complex his personality has become over the years. His iconic green pants and white shirt combination was originally chosen because those colors were easy to reproduce consistently in animation. Here's something that might make you smile as you're drifting off. Peter Griffin has inadvertently solved more crimes than most actual detectives on television, not through any kind of investigative skill, mind you, but through sheer dumb luck and his tendency to stumble into situations where criminals just happen to confess everything to him. He's uncovered everything from art theft rings to international espionage operations, usually while just trying to buy a sandwich or find a bathroom. The character's impact on popular culture extends far beyond the show itself. Peter's laugh has been sampled in music tracks. His catchphrases have entered everyday vocabulary, and his image has appeared on everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs. There's even been academic papers written about his role as a representation of American masculinity in the 21st century, which is probably something Peter himself would find hilariously pretentious. Peter's driving skills, or complete lack thereof, deserve special mention. He's been responsible for more animated car accidents than any other cartoon character in history. The Department of Motor Vehicles in the show's universe has apparently given up on revoking his license, instead just accepting that Peter Griffin behind the wheel is simply a force of nature that must be endured. The show's writers have admitted that they sometimes write episodes specifically around Peter's most ridiculous character traits. There are entire plot lines that exist solely because someone in the writer's room wondered what would happen if Peter tried to do something completely ordinary, like go grocery shopping or attend a parent-teacher conference, and inevitably turned it into a disaster of epic proportions. As we wrap up this collection of Family Guy facts, here's one final detail that perfectly captures the show's absurdist spirit. In the show's internal logic, Peter Griffin is simultaneously the most incompetent person alive and somehow capable of surviving situations that would destroy normal human beings. He's a character who can't figure out how to use a can opener but can somehow survive being hit by a train. He's confused by basic mathematics, but has accidentally invented several revolutionary technologies while trying to fix his toaster. These contradictions aren't bugs in the show's writing, they're features. Family Guy exists in a universe where logic is optional and consistency is overrated. Peter Griffin embodies this philosophy perfectly, being both completely relatable and utterly impossible at the same time. Whether that helps you fall asleep or keeps you awake wondering about the nature of animated reality is entirely up to you. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the world of Family Guy, even the most ridiculous facts somehow make perfect sense, which might be the most ridiculous fact of all.